Can you believe I made this custom upholstery fabric using the new IOD Peony Stamp and IOD permanent inks? The new IOD stamps are big, they're bold, they're beautiful, and they're so versatile. I'm going to show you some ways that I'll use them on projects that I pulled out of my stash. For my first project, I'll be doing this cute little vintage stool. When you remove your stamps from the package, take that top covering sheet off of the stamps. Then use a worn sanding block to sand over the surface of the stamp. On the textured side of the stamp, you only need to scuff them up the very first time that you use them. When I'm working with really large format stamps like the peony, I like to keep them on the backing sheet. Then I cut them apart because it makes it so much easier to use them later on.
Had you been watching and waiting from some place up above, somehow knowing.
For my upholstery fabric, I've chosen a really nice heavyweight linen fabric. These are IOD permanent inks. They come in lots of colors. For this upholstery project, I'm going to be using the black. IOD also has erasable chalk inks. You don't want to get the two of them mixed up. You want to make sure you get the permanent ink. This is a blank ink pad. What I want to do, shake up my ink, fill my ink pad until it's fully saturated. Okay, let's make upholstery fabric. Lay your stamps down, then apply the ink onto the surface of the stamp. As you stamp your fabric, you want to hold the stamp with one hand, stabilizing it, and then use your other hand to press completely over every bit of that stamp. You really want to make sure that you get a good impression and that the ink soaks down into your fabric.
You don't have to do one single thing. You don't know how much I want you. Just looking at you makes my whole world spin.
This is what's fun. You get to create your own design. One thing that I recommend is saving a scrap piece of fabric to practice on. You want to get a good technique going and make sure that you are comfortable using the stamps before you apply them to your finished fabric.
I'll put your favorite music on all the way baritone. Shut the lights, go infrared. We can spend all day in bed. I'll put the TV in the room.
All IOD stamps come with something called a bonus reusable mask. What is that? Well, it's not this. A reusable mask is a thin, flexible sheet of plastic. Each of the elements of the stamp has a piece that corresponds to it in a mask. They're cut to the same shape as each of the stamp parts. So here's how you use them. Apply your first stamp and then choose the mask that goes with it. Place the mask onto your stamped area. Then you choose the piece that you want to layer with your original stamp. I chose a leaf. Then I'll stamp over the fabric and the mask. And when I lift the mask, What's left behind is the stamp coming from behind that peony stamp.
About halfway in, I noticed it was just an outlet. Anyone so alone.
After your ink has dried for 24 hours, heat set it with a dry, hot iron. Now it's time to upholster. Remove all the tacks, all the staples, all the yucky fabric, so that we have a good foundation for our new upholstery. After I've stripped the whole stool, I'm going to paint the bottom of it with a couple coats of black paint. Then, after my paint has dried, I'll distress it back using my orbital sander.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone?
Before I apply my finished fabric, I want to make sure that I bulk up and add extra padding where I need to. I really want a nice, cushy, soft stool.
Trees will whisper.
Then staple the cover batting in place with a staple gun.
Will spread your joy to the one.
Now I take my finished fabric, my custom-made upholstery fabric. I'll lay it over the stool and position it so that it makes sense. One tip that I have, I like to measure and mark off with chalk and a straight line so that I keep the bottom edge of my fabric nice and straight. This forms a great line that I can test my fabric to as I staple it.
I can't help but dream.
Staple my fabric in place, working from one side, then to the opposite side. Pulling the fabric taut, I want to work the fabric in all directions, smoothing it with my hands and pulling as I work from side to side.
Is that there should be.
Then finish off the corners with a nice mitered fold and staple that in place. I use a single edge razor to cut and trim away the excess fabric right underneath my staple line.
Dreaming of you.
To finish off my stool, I plug in my glue gun and then I'm going to find some trim and glue that into place all along that bottom edge.
Dreaming of you. Dreaming of you. Dreaming of you. Dreaming of you. What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your
I made my own upholstery fabric with the new IOD Peony Stamp. It's just one way to use these awesome stamps. Watch for my next video where I'll show you another way.
dreaming of
You can find IOD products with your local stockist, or you're welcome to stop by our brick and mortar shop in Medina, New York. You can also find us at lnjgoods.com.